Hi everybody, in this video we're going to look at arrays. Arrays allow us to store a bunch of things together all under the same name. Basically, in this scenario we're asked to write a program that will store and print the 7 dwarves, meaning the names of the 7 dwarves, Happy and Sneezy and all those guys. And you could conceivably write a program like this based on what you already know up to this point in the class. You would maybe do something like this, like come up with a variable called dwarf1 and set it equal to Happy, and so on down the line, and get dwarf 2, dwarf 3, dwarf 4, and so on till you have all 7 of them. And that's one way of doing it. A better way of doing it is to use an array, okay? And basically I'm going to create an array called dwarves. And I'm going to put each of the 7 dwarves into the array. Now, I'm going to see they're all going to be stored together under the same name, so we have to find a way of differentiating them, and we do that when we use an array with what we call an index. So I'm going to put an index here. An index is just a number, okay, and you put it in square brackets in small basic. And so in the dwarves array, in the first location, I'm going to put Happy. Alright? And then, this is about to get very repetitive here. In the dwarves array, in the second location, I'm going to put Sneezy. Okay, and then in the third position here, I will put our next dwarf, which will be Sleepy. And so on down the line till we have all 7 of them. These are indexes, these numbers here. And the name of the array is dwarves. Just 2 more. So we have our dwarves array populated. It's now populated with dwarves or dwarf names. And basically what we have is something like this in memory. If you can imagine this. Okay, here's our dwarves array. This is the, these are the values that are contained in the array, all the dwarves' names, and then each dwarf has his index. All right. You know what indexes are at this point. That's the number of each spot in the array. Another term I'd like you to know is this term, elements, or each position in the array, each slot in the array where a dwarf is stored is called an element. So this array, our dwarves array, has 7 elements with indexes numbered 1 through 7. Okay, so I got the dwarves into the array. How am I going to get them back out? The whole point of putting data into an array or storing it somewhere is ultimately you want to get it back out. So what if I want to print the names of the 7 dwarves? How can I get them back out of my array? Well, I could do this. I could go down the line and write 7 statements like this. Okay, and for the first one, I can say, all right, print the dwarf in element number 1, and that would be Happy, and that would print Happy. And I could copy this and paste it and do it 7 times for each of the dwarves and just change the index as we go down the line. That's one way of doing it. It's not the best way of doing it. In a program like this, it wouldn't be a big deal to write those 7 lines of code. But what if you had an array that had 7,000 things in it? Are you going to write 7,000 print statements like this? No. The way to, the most efficient way to go through an array and print the values in it is to loop through the array. So I will write a for loop before, here we'll say for, I'll just use the word count as my loop counter here. For count equals 1 to 7. Alright, I'm going to end this sandwich before I do anything else. Okay, so for count equals 1 to 7, I'm going to write at the text window from the dwarfs array. Now, what do you think is going to happen if I run this program as is? Watch what happens. Happy, 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 and so on down the line. That's not what we wanted. We wanted all of the dwarves printed, not happy 7 times. So basically, this is the culprit here. I said, okay, 7 times, write this, go into that first element with the index of 1 in the dwarves array, which is happy in this case, and print his name. That obviously won't work for us, what we want to do. So what we have to do, and this is a very common thing to want to do in programming, it's instead of hard coding a number here, like the number 1, we will, when we're looping through an array, we have to use the loop counter, in this case count, this guy, we have to use him as our array index. Okay, so first time through this loop, count does have a value of 1. And so it'll print dwarves 1, which is happy. The second time through the loop, count takes on a value of 2. So we're printing dwarves 2, which is sneezy. Third time through the loop, count takes on a value of 3. And so we're going to print dwarves 3, which is sleepy, and so on down the line. So that's how we're going to get all of the dwarves printed. And there they are. Okay? All right, one more small tidbit in this program. Here I hard-coded the number 7. I set up the loop to go through numbers 1 through 7, which is correct in this case. There are 7 dwarves, and there probably always will be. But, sometimes it's better to not hard-code that value. This is basically the size of the array. And yes, there are always going to be 7 dwarfs, but what if this was a list of students in a class, and it was the first week of the semester, and we're still getting new students registering at the last minute, or some students are dropping and leaving the class. So the size of the list is always going to be in flux. So sometimes it's a good idea not to hard code the size, the max size of the array per se, but what you can do, and I would imagine all languages have a way of doing this, and Small Basic is no exception. We can type the word array. There's an array object, okay, that comes with Small Basic, dot, and there's this method here, get item count. And then you have to, you see me over here on the right, you have to provide the name of the array that you're interested in. And in our case, it's the dwarves array. Okay, so if I were to get rid of one of these dwarves, it would be fine. I wouldn't have that hard-coded 7 in there. And if the size of the array were to change, then I wouldn't have to worry about this. This will take care of itself. Okay? And of course the result is the same.